the practical implementation part of the HSMs. So could you just also explain, if any enterprise looking at purchasing a new HSMs, what are the technical specs that needs to be taken into considerations? What would the enterprise look for in terms of integrating that HSMs that could have a flawless results? Objectives is fulfilled. Would you like to take this forward, Harsh?
Sure. So when it comes to choosing an HSM for your business or for your organization, there obviously the first thing needs to be considered is the compliance. So if you are falling in an industry or if your business it needs to meet certain compliances, and if it says that you need an HSM, then you have no choice but to procure one. Now, when it comes to when you have to decide which HSM, these are the few things which are commonly seen as the deciding factors. So when it comes to, say, security strength, again, if your operation is very, very critical, if it is a critical defense operation or something which requires the highest level of security, then you need to look at parameters such as whether the keys are being stored inside the cryptographic module, whether the algorithms that the HSM is supporting are the latest, most relevant algorithms, and they're not the outdated ones or the algorithms that are deemed as vulnerable. So your security strength of the HSM is dependent on these factors. Another thing that I would like to touch upon here is we are obviously looking at a future in which quantum cryptography is going to be a major challenge. So once quantum devices or quantum computers come into the picture, they will be able to break current encryption in, say, much lesser time, or it will be much more feasible to, say, break certain current algorithms or security mechanisms that are in place. So if you are looking to have if you have a long-term overview of, or if you have a long-term view of wanting an HSM, then I recommend you should also look at HSMs which are having PQC-enabled algorithms or are actively working towards having PQC algorithms integrated. So that is about security strength. Then comes the integration capabilities. If your current, say, solutions or if your current applications are running on, say, some legacy interfaces or on PKCS 11 stack, if you have the capability to integrate it, then most of the HSMs will support that. If your stack is based on microservices architecture, then you need the HSM to support REST API integration. That is another deciding factor. Then comes the scalability. So currently, if your organization is dealing with an X amount of data, or if you need an X throughput, 5 years into the future or 10 years into the future, if that throughput is going to scale, say 10 times, 15 times, then you need to have that oversight and you need to decide whether the HSM that you're procuring is going to be able to support that much of throughput. So TPS, transactions per second, is a standard measure of the HSM performance. So that is one point. And also in terms of the scalability, if your organization, if only one department in the organization is currently having, say, a need for cryptographic encryption, and going forward, if there are going to be multiple departments in your organization which are going to need the HSM to store the keys, then can you have that level of partitioning, or can you scale a single device to, say, serve the needs of multiple departments in your organization or multiple teams? So scalability and performance are also two very, very important factors when it comes to choosing an HSM. So once you made the decision, there obviously will be certain implementation challenges because these devices are going to handle a lot of critical processes and critical data. So you need to make sure that before you're integrating an HSM into your environment, you need to have the right visibility as to where the keys are currently present. So if you have a challenge of not knowing where most of these keys are present, who is the owner, or what department is utilizing what keys, then all of that needs to be collated into a single place before you can actually integrate the HSM and let it take over the security aspect. Another thing that needs to be looked after, obviously, is say a scenario in which your HSM environment goes down. So if you are having the HSM in your data center in your DC environment, and if DC shuts down, you need to have certain failover or a backup environment in which you need to have another HSM maybe, so that your business continuity is not affected. So break glass scenarios are also something that are very important to ensure that your businesses are not affected. And another challenge that is the support. So if an HSM vendor is, say, not providing the required amount of support at the time of integration or implementation, then that can be a big challenge as well, because we have seen scenarios in the past where the businesses or organizations don't, or the technology teams rather, they are not, say, used to integrating PKCS hash 11. So that is a challenge. So if you need a lot of initial hand holding, then that is again an implementation question that you need to look after. Then just to zoom out a bit, I mean, we've been talking about hardware security modules in this entire webinar, but just this question does come up sometimes, that whether or not do you really even need an HSM? What is your end use case? What is your compliance requirement, or how much of a risk it is if you don't have an HSM in your environment? So these two deciding factors, that is the compliance, like I said initially, if you're in a regulated industry, or if there is a compliance which specifically dictates you need an HSM, then it's a no-brainer. You have to acquire it or you have to procure it. If at all the compliances don't directly dictate an HSM, then you need to evaluate the risks of not having an HSM. If you're having adequate security measures in place, if you just need external key management to be looked after, then in these scenarios, maybe a KMS also would suffice your requirements. But what we recommend, or what the best practices are, is to have the hardware security module and the key manager both work together. The benefits of this are that your HSM is going to look after the security of the keys, and the KMS is going to look after the flexibility. So we saw earlier how, because of the privacy by design principle, this kind of sometimes creates a bit of a choke point. All the operations taking place within the cryptographic boundary of the HSM, you're for sure going to add a certain amount of latency on top of your operations. So if you're looking at high volume encryption and you need minimal latency, then just having an HSM in your environment may not be the right approach. So in this case, you have the HSM in the background that is going to secure your master key, and your key manager that is going to actually perform what is called as key federation. So it is going to hand out the key to the end application to perform the encryption decryption operations, and it is going to store that key back in the key manager's database. And the key manager's database in the background is going to be encrypted by the key that is stored in the HSM. So it is like envelope encryption. It happens in stages. And like I said, if the HSM is the root of trust, if that is storing the master key, then everything else that is, say, a consequence of having that master key in the HSM can be deemed as safe. Gaurav, sir?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Harsh. So before we move to the final takeaway, I would like everyone to take a moment and reflect on this. That we have spoken a lot about encryption, keys, securities, but in your own organization, do you actually know where all your encryption keys are stored today? So are they sitting in applications, servers, or the cloud environment? And more importantly, are they truly protected or just they are encrypted? So because, as we discussed, encryption alone it does not guarantee a security. So it doesn't, if it is only encrypted, it does not guarantee the security of the system. But if the keys are accessible, then the protection is only on the surface. And this is the reality in many organizations that are facing today, that they have encryption in place, but they don't have complete visibility or control over their keys. And that's exactly is the gap that need to be addressed. So the final takeaways so to summarize this discussion, so first thing, the encryption is very essential, but by itself it is not enough. So secondly, the real controls lies with the cryptographic keys. So if the keys are compromised, the entire security model breaks down. So third, what happens, many of today's risks are not due to the weak algorithms, so but due to how the keys are stored, accessed, or managed. So this is the reason why, this is the final reason of encryption being compromised. And finally, to truly secure the modern system, organization need to have a strong foundation of trust. So not just at a software level, but at a hardware backed level. And that is where the solutions like hardware security modules or HSM come into picture. So to ensure that the most critical asset, your keys, are protected in a way that even if the system is compromised, they remain secure.